Have you ever wondered what the difference is between imposter syndrome and just feeling like you're fatally flawed? If so, this video is for you because that's my pondering of the moment. So in this video, I'm just kind of going to be talking about something that I've been considering and pondering on that has come up in my own personal growth journey. So take what you want from it, throw out the rest, or just listen to a good story, but that's all that this video is. So I started coming across this pondering as I've been doing a lot of training to try to increase my presence, try to be more of a cheerleader. I'm a group fitness instructor, so my boss requested I be more of a cheerleader. So I'm trying to figure out how to do that like in a natural way that actually goes with me and it doesn't feel like really fake or isn't like really annoying because, anybody who's been into a group fitness class with a really super cheery person who's not really actually checking in with their audience knows peppy cheerleaders can be annoying sometimes. And I definitely don't want to become that. So that's been kind of my thing that's been going. So I've been listening to a lot of content and stuff on that, and then also about building businesses and stuff. And one of the themes that kept coming up was imposter syndrome. And so it's kind of one of those things that I was like, oh, of course I have imposter syndromes. I've thought about it. I have like all the other anxiety and problems or whatever. So of course I have it, right? But when I was really thinking about it and I heard some people describing it, I was realizing I really don't. I really don't have imposter syndrome. Like when I think that everything's going to fall apart, it's not because I think people are going to find out I'm a phony and I'm going to be caught out. There's like a lot of other reasons there. Like I kind of feel like more like I'm building a building on a earthquake crack, and that pressure of that building is going to cause a quake and everything's going to fall down into the pit of the, split in the earth that's going to happen, and it's just going to fall apart, and it's going to be my all doing because I know the crack's there. And so that really is what happens. I kind of have a more of a sense of feeling that I'm going to be the cause of my own demise. But it's not, I don't really actually feel like people don't see it and that they're going to be taken by surprise by it. I really kind of feel that most people can see my flaws. So the only person who's going to be surprised when it finally happens is going to be no one, except if you weren't paying attention. So I was just realizing that doesn't really fit with imposter syndrome. So I've been kind of contemplating the differences between imposter syndrome and that feeling of being a fatal flaw, and like what exactly actually is underneath both of them, and what it requires to actually deal with and maybe grow for those who have imposter syndrome versus those who deal more with feeling like they're fatally flawed. So here's some conclusions I've come up with, thanks to my wonderful husband being my sounding board. And I was really realizing both of them really have to do with the relation to shadow. So quick rundown on, different psychologies or whatever. There's that ideal that we have a persona, there's that filter of what we choose to show the outside world. So that's what the out world sees is our persona. Everyone has to have one. Everyone has it. And then behind that mask is our ego that has, all that pride and all those little things to do, but our ego is what we think about ourselves. And then behind the ego, we have the anima, which is our filter between our ego and our shadow. And then of course we have our shadow, which is our darkness. It's the things that we're weak in, that we're never going to be able to tame. It's that temper tantruming child, that's always going to be a problem. It's icky things that we don't want to see about ourselves, and we like to push into a corner and lock the door and pretend that we don't see it. And then anyone who's done any personal growth work knows part of growing is being able to open that door, actually see what's in there, and develop a relationship with it in a way that we're in control of what's in our shadow. It's not running our lives. It's not wreaking havoc. But we're developing a relationship on knowing that we can't get rid of it. We're never going to master it. It's never going to become creatures of light. It's just always going to be there. So we might as well give it a seat at the table and develop a proper relationship with it so we can contain it and not let it control everything else from the shadows. We can't, because it's going to make us say, and one way or another. And then if you lock it away, you just don't know what kind of destruction it's doing. It's just going to go under the radar. But if you build a better relationship with it, then you can kind of control it. So with that thought or whatever, this is what I kind of came up with this week. So being fatally flawed, that anima, that filter that kind of keeps us, that's between our ego and our shadow. So what that anima does is it kind of keeps us from, when it comes through it, it kind of gives, it's supposed to give like a barrier. So you don't feel like that direct impact. It's not that critical nagging voice like, you're horrible, like, look how dark you are. You know, it kind of protects you from it where you don't get like lost or have that like super nihilistic voice in your head. So I think people who have imposter syndrome have a good anima that's actually filtering that out. And the people who feel more fatally flawed, the anima is not really in that conversation. You are aware of your shadow. You've been there, you know, probably unintentionally. So there's probably, because you have that fatal flaw narrative, you don't necessarily have a good relationship with your shadow, but you've definitely gone there, shook hands, you know what's inside that closet. And then after you got to know it, then you started kind of going on, away, moving on with your shadow. And that shadow has turned into that nihilistic voice that's like, you're fatally flawed. It's going to ruin you. You're going to ruin everybody. Like there's no redeeming this. So you don't have any filter. You don't have that anima filter helping you deal with the shadow. It's just a nagging voice in your head. While people with imposter syndrome maybe haven't started on that journey yet. They have a sense that it's there. They have a good filter and they know they have a closet. They know there's something there that could leak out, that people might, if they see past their persona, they're going to see that, and that's going to undo their work. And there's that sense of the archetype. There's the archetype of whatever you're doing. Like, this is what the leader is. This is what being a good spouse or a parent is here. And so, there's like these archetypes, these perfect archetypes of things that they're doing. And so they know that there's a gap between that, because they know there's a gap that they're working on. And then they feel like the persona is good enough where people aren't going to see that gap. And then they also think that if their persona ever falls, their shadow is going to be shown, and they don't know what's in their shadow. And so, that not only is it people going to be able to see it too, then they're going to have no choice but to have to like crash land, being forced to have to deal with their shadow. And I think that's more what the sense of imposter syndrome is that sense of the door is going to open without my permission, and and everyone's going to see what's in there, and they know they haven't done the work. So what this means in terms of growth is neither one is neither better than the other or worse than the other. It's just different kind of work that has to be done. So the person with the imposter syndrome really needs to be like being willing to see past their anima and be able to start, very intentionally opening the door and looking at what's in the closet, start categorizing it, start taking, inventory of what kind of destruction it actually is doing in their lives, under the radar, and actually start developing some kind of relationship with their shadow. And so once they know what their shadow is, that way they can start making intentional steps to actually integrate it and, bring that shadow as a player. And then from there, making the adjustments to their persona, to the outside world, that will also include the shadow, and, becoming more integrated and whole there. So then they don't feel like there's something in the closet. And then they have to also just integrate with that or whatever to realize that, yes, archetypes are meant to be, archetypes. We can't really reach them. They're goals to go towards, and we're always going to be working towards things. We can't necessarily hit perfection and stuff. So obviously there's going to be a gap, and then you still have to deal with that gap and, adjust your persona accordingly to realize that people know that, and there's room for that, or at least they should know that, and they shouldn't be expecting you to be perfect. That's a whole other story. That's the problem. So that's what imposter syndrome needs to do. And then those more with fatal flaw who already have a relationship with shadow, but it wasn't intentional, and now they've gone down this road with this nihilistic narrative, they need to backtrack. So they're going to have to deconstruct their fatal flaw narrative, which I have videos for adapting to fear, the fatal flaw, that kind of goes more deep into that and how to do that and stuff. So you can check those out. But they're going to have to backtrack. They're out in the world, but they're going to have to backtrack in and go back to that closet to where they first met their shadow. And they need to deconstruct the narrative around it. And then they need to intentionally bring that shadow to the table so that it has a proper voice of where it's recognized and it's seen, but it is not this beast narrative nagging you in your head and telling you everything's like horrible and, everything's going to fall apart and all the things that happen when you have that kind of relationship. So, two different kinds of work. So there's actually pros to that. So imposter syndrome has more of a pro that they get actually when they actually go and touch the shadow and deal with it, that they're doing it intentionally and mindfully, and they can gather resources and do it, learn from other people's experiences, everything, and that can make that process smoother. And then they're able to just move forward directly. And then, but the hard part will be accepting that fact that there actually is a filter and there's something behind it. It's very easy to be like, when you have a really good anima filter, to be like, I just ignore it. It's not there. I don't know what you're talking about. So that's the hardest part on that or whatever, is actually realizing that you need to do that and getting your ego to cooperate, to understand that it wants to do that. Because, you have that real ego fight that's going to keep you blind and try to keep you from seeing it. So that's the pro and that's the con of that direction. And then the fatally flawed, the hardest part is going to be turning back, because you have this really nihilistic, critical, cynical voice. So having to deconstruct your narratives, that's never a pleasant thing. That's really hard to do. Because now you have ego and shadow at play, especially with that kind of narrative. So you have to deconstruct, find the mundane thing, rethink the past, get more present, all that hard work that takes from deconstructing a narrative, which again, I have another video for. But we deconstruct that narrative, but once you get back to the shadow, you're already used to it sitting at the table. Now it just needs, you're already used to it being this big old thing here. Now you're giving it, a small seat. And so it's a lot smaller. So you have a lot of experience of dealing with something a lot bigger now. So once you actually can deconstruct back and then you move forward, you actually have all the times that you've let it run the show isn't completely lost. You have that experience of dealing with the shadow and understanding that darkness that's in everybody and stuff. So that's the bonus. So pros and cons, different types of growth, different types of ways of going about it. But that's why I thought it was important for me to think about it because, like I said, it's a little different, same difference, same end goal, little bit of different roads to get there, depending on where you are in life. And I just think those nuances are important, so that you can adapt your personal growth to you. Because the North Star isn't necessarily subjective, but sometimes the nuanced little ways that we have to adapt things to ourselves is a little subjective. And you really have to have a lot of self-awareness to be able to do that, because otherwise you just let your, you think you did work or you didn't do work, or you think it doesn't apply to you because it's hard, skip all that and stuff. So there we go. So that's my pondering of the moment. Do with it whatever you will. To let me know if it's helpful at all. If maybe you thought you suffered from imposter syndrome and you're realizing, hey, I actually have a fatal flaw. Or just realizing some people think they're fatally flawed and they don't do with it, and you can maybe respond differently to some people. So thank you for listening. Thank you for joining me in this video. Check out my other videos on this channel. I have a couple other channels. I have Integrate Body, Integrate Philosophy, so you could also check out those. And I thank you for watching. Have a great rest of your day. See you again.